floodgates have opened with the tries. Loose, and the chip through man across the problem, and touchdown by Ross Thompson on appearance number 50. His final moment at Scotstoun Stadium. Naholo, and they settled his cause. Worked to perfection by the Blues, and Caleb Clark scores. Beautifully executed from the Blues. Funaki puts it dead. Blues into the semi-final. Season comes to an end for the Drua. They've done so.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. We are back. Yeah, after a couple of times. I think we tried 2 or 3 times this week. Nothing came about. But now we are back. Playoff footy, quarterfinals URC, quarterfinals Super Rugby, and some controversial topics regarding international footy. Not by myself. I'm always with the lovely crew. Hugh, the stats man, all the way in the UK. Hugh, how's it going, brother?
It's going good, mate. It's going good. I'm sorry if you can hear a whirring noise in the background. My laptop, whenever you ask it to go on the internet, decides it wants to go supernova. So I'll try and keep on mute as much as possible recording this. But yeah, looking forward to the chat.
No worries. Jade, always sunny in Bloemfontein, but it's winter time in South Africa. Ice cold.
Freezing, brother, freezing. Yeah, but I'm here.
Fantastic. I see Vickers Miranda struggling with the Wi-Fi over there in Russia, in and out of the connection. Vickers, all good in Russia?
How's it, Jess? Yeah, all good. I just finished the tournament, so I'm still a little bit running crazy around, but all good. Everything good.
Yeah. How did the tournament go, by the way, actually?
Yeah, the boys came fifth. They came fifth. We lost a very useless game, actually, which just made us on the back foot the whole tournament. But the good thing is that we're still number one on the log, so which is great.
No, fantastic. Keep working, keep pushing. Obviously, that's why we are in this game, to be challenged and also learn from the challenges we are faced with. Hugh, how's the gardening this week?
I haven't gotten to any this week. I probably remiss in not doing that, although the front lawn needs doing. It needs doing badly. I'm bringing down the house prices in the neighbourhood.
All right, gentlemen, not wasting any time. Let's jump straight into it. We've got so much to cover. We've got the URC quarterfinals. We've got the Super Rugby quarterfinals. We've got the French, Fabien Galtier, talking about keeping 20 of his star players behind for the 2025 rugby tour to New Zealand. So basically, they'll be taking their B team all the way to New Zealand. Let's see how the New Zealanders would respond to something like this. We also have currently the Springbok squad been announced yesterday, a few omissions. We will also be touching on that. But let's get into the nitty-gritty without wasting any time. I think let's start off with URC. Then we'll head off down under and cover the Super Rugby. And then the most important one of the day, Rugby DNA, New Zealand and the Springboks. Right, Vickers, understanding that you've been doubling up, coaching, tournament footy, Super Rugby on one side, URC on the other side. Which game stuck out for you in the URC of the quarterfinals that were played yesterday, and there was one on Friday?
Yeah, so I think the one on Friday was not so interesting. I literally watched it first half and then I just decided to switch it off. On Saturday, I got to watch obviously the three games. I thought Benetton were outstanding. I thought the Bulls were found wanting at times, and it will be interesting what Leinster will do when it comes this coming weekend, because I'm pretty sure that they're going to employ some of the tactics, avoiding the lineouts. I mean, the Bull scrums dominated the Sharks last weekend, but this weekend they seem to be. They got a couple of penalties, but they seem to struggle against Benetton. But other than that, Leinster. I mean, Leinster were on cruise control. I don't even think once in that game they felt like they needed to step it up a little bit in a notch. So I felt they were pretty comfortable throughout. And then last game was the Stormers and Glasgow. Well, yeah, what can we say? Sometimes this is what happens when you have structure. When you have structure, it protects your team. But when there's no structure, then you try to find a way to play structure. It's always going to be difficult, and didn't help the guys that they actually went on and had a couple of missed goal kicks, which obviously put them under pressure, because they could have actually kept on the score ticking, and probably would have pushed Glasgow towards the end, but yeah, they didn't. So yeah, so just one of those things that I noticed. Nothing tactically though, just maybe just watching the rugby from a fan's point of view.
All right, no, fair enough. We'll get into the tactical stuff. Hugh, what was your standout match for this past URC quarterfinals weekend?
It's not been a vintage weekend. Let's be honest. We praise it when it's great rugby. To be honest, I think neither the URC or Super Rugby had brilliant rugby this weekend. I think probably the Bulls Benetton one. I think Benetton deserve a lot of credit for how much they made the Bulls sweat. A very, very different game from when these two sides met a couple of weeks ago. I don't know. I feel like the Bulls have got some kind of a confidence issue right now. They went up to Leinster and they got hammered. They fell apart in that second half. Then they came home and they got beat by Munster. They're supposed to be invincible at Loftus, but they got beat at home. And I just feel like they've been kind of wobbly ever since. Yes, they've been getting results, but they've not been. I'm not seeing a performance from the Bulls that's coming that says, yes, we are going to win this title, which is disappointing because I backed them so early on. So I think Benetton deserve a lot of credit, and probably a bit unfortunate to have to make that trip. But look, Bulls still in it, have another chance in the semi-final now, taking on Leinster. That is going to be a tough one. Very, very tough game for them. Looking forward to that one. Hopefully that's a lot more exciting. I just hope the Bulls can turn up. A bit of injuries worry for them now. But I'd probably have to pick that game. I think the other three games were pretty, not disappointing, but not that close contest. Unfortunately, there's a lot to say about the Stormers. There's a lot to say about the Stormers, but there's also a lot that we've already said this season. They are a team playing bad rugby, waiting on their superstars to bail them out of it. And as was the case again in Glasgow, unfortunately, I think the coaches have got something to answer for, to be honest.
Oh, double. Ball is in your court, double. Craig, Jade?
Yeah, no, I think you were spot on there with the two games that I really, spent really focused on this weekend. And it's the same boat as we tried watching a bit of Munster and Ospreys on Friday. And yeah, it was no way that, Munster was really going to lose that game. And the same with Leinster as well. But I mean, the Bulls and Benetton was the game for me. Credit goes to Benetton for coming to South Africa and actually bringing it to the Bulls. The Bulls any old Bulls supporter would, be honest and say they weren't at the best, but a win is a win. I mean, you just got to get into the next round, and then we'll take it from there. And I'm sure that Ndaba Zinto will be welcoming Leinster into South Africa next week. When they get in South Africa, you'll be there at the Ortambo waiting for them to come down. But yeah, I mean, they're in the semi-finals. They've got a coaching group, I mean, that knows how to handle semifinals. I mean, they're a franchise that played a number of semifinals, so they'll prepare well for this game. If I can touch a little bit on the Stormers for me, and if you look at the overall, you want to see even Super Rugby as well, the quarterfinals. I mean, we saw all the home teams winning. And it's just opportunities you have to take. I mean, you can't get a guy like, okay, I'm not going to, shift blame at him. But I mean, the 10 points Manny Lebok left out there, I mean, there was scoreboard pressure. And in so many aspects, I mean, the Glasgow wasn't really better than the Stormers. I felt that, the game was there for the Stormers to win. And unfortunately, they didn't take their opportunities. I think it's a perfect time now in their review, in their postseason review of the Stormers, just to go ahead, look at the coaching structure, look at what they have. They maybe bring one or two in the background, and assist them in certain aspects, because there has been a few positives in the team. But I still think that, maybe one or two new ideas freshen up here or there, and then they'll go again next season. But I mean, they got to rule the most opportunities, against Glasgow from the boot. I mean,
Jared, are you there?
game actually in Scotland. Because it's time to reflect for the Stormers and franchise and look for something new going forward.
Yeah. I think we missed the last 5 seconds of what you were saying there, but I think we get you the gist of your views and your comments. Sticking with the Stormers, I think we're going to stick with the Stormers, then move on to the Blue Bulls quickly. But sticking with the Stormers, obviously, Jade, you mentioned things like the kicking element where they left 10 plus points of the tee, which could have actually assisted them in terms of building scoreboard pressure. Vuyo talks about unorthodox or unstructured way of playing, which now is where I think now the Stormers are being found out, basically, that the whole unorthodox way of playing is really not cutting it at URC level. And obviously, Hugh mentioning the things like, at some point somebody needs to own up or somebody needs to take some blame with regards to this. But on a technical aspect, Jade, in terms of structure, because I think they did try and play a bit of structure into Saturday's game, because first half, I think, yes, they tried to play their normal Stormers rugby, inverted commas, but second half, they tried to be more direct, and that actually got them into good positions to score points. They got penalties, but the penalties were not converted into points. But for you, Jay, do you think going forward for the Stormers, do they still need to remain playing the unorthodox, unstructured way, or it's time to have structure now, and it's time to have a foundation to play from? Yes, maybe at times they will be required to be innovative and have those players that will actually finish off games for them or come up with something special. If those things if they don't get those special moments, then they get results like we saw yesterday, for example. This is when now you need a very good kicker. Thoughts?
Yeah, okay. I'm not going to throw too much blame on Manny and on his goal kicking. I mean, he knows, we all know that, he did miss a few yesterday. And unfortunately, I know he's the place kicker in the team. I mean, that does fall on him. But at the end of the day, for me, like we all mentioned, that the Stormers got bailed out a lot with the big game players, the Damien Willemses, the Manis at times, the Gelans, even Roos. Those kind of guys bailing them out of trouble. I mean, against the Lions last week, you had even Roos bailing them out. How many times didn't Damien Willemse bail them out? And if you look at the good performances they had this season, I mean, if you look back and you look at, and you mentioned a few, look at the La Rochelle game in the group stages in Cape Town, the game against Stade Francais that they played in Paris, and you look at the style of rugby they played, that is what we need the Stormers to do. That for me is more their DNA. But now here's the problem. I mean, they did that and they performed in those games with Deon Fourie. So how much of a miss in terms of their balance and their shape going on attack and defense is a guy like Deon Fourie? Do they have a like-for-like replacement? Unfortunately, Deon Fourie is turning 38. I don't know if he'll be back, if we'll get, the same Deon Fourie, how much of Deon Fourie is left. But I mean, after that, we started looking at playing both and between Amani, Diamante, and even Roos in the loose forward. Did that combo really work? Can they play together? Is the balance right? Then you definitely need a guy like Dion Fourie. I mean, we've just seen Rasmus give Ben, what's in the Dixon Jason, his flowers now and selecting him in the Bok team. How much of do they need somebody like that that's steady up front, more solid? So for me, in terms of the Stormers, if I look at the way and the style of play, even in the second half when they played more directly yesterday, as you say, but I look at those two games, over on the season. I look at the La Rochelle game they won in Cape Town, the Stade Francais game they won. That was the kind of Stormers we knew and we saw, okay, this is it. They're their full potential. This is when they are dangerous. After that, they try to throw things around, throw balls around. They try to push things at certain times. I mean, they had a few moments of brilliance this season with not Manilibok, Geland's dummy, and they few, razzle-dazzle tries this season. But they haven't really lit the season up like they did a few seasons ago and last year especially. So for me, I think now, like I said, it's perfect time for them to go back and see what is there, what works, and what's strong for them. Because if you look at the players they have at their disposal, what would be best for them? So I really think, Scoop, and I really think the loss that they had, we can't also see, we can't say, we don't see it so much on the performance in terms of losing a lot of games, but what affected a guy like Dion Fourie when he got injured in terms of the balance in this team? What did that do to this team? Because, I mean, let's be honest, a year ago, Dion Fourie was absolutely world-class, and we've seen it in the World Cup as well. He was world-class. And to lose a player like that, I mean, the Stormers based a lot of the game around him, So, yeah, for me, that was the main thing. And also, the scrum has been a bit wobbly this season. It hasn't been, I mean, with the likes of Nietland Fouchier, with the likes of Frans Malherbe even in the team, they haven't really, been absolute dominant at scrum time as well. What I expect from them, like we seen 12 months ago. Okay, they lost Kitshoff, but I mean, they haven't really been that, that scrum dominance as well this season. So I'm not sure, honestly, are they caught between two DNAs, or are they getting ahead with themselves, trying to play expansive rugby? You can get that. But like I say, if you look at the Stormers, the two games, the La Rochelle game, the Stade Francais game, that was the two games for me where I would want them to play rugby like that. And, that is when they were most impressive for me.
Before Hugh, you jump on, Jade, I've got Mpumelelo asking, what about Namaklaba as a replacement for Fourie? And then Hugh, you can jump on after that.
No, definitely he is. But I mean, then again, look at the experience Dion Fourie has, Namaklaba is a decent player. I mean, he deserves more opportunity in that six jumper, but there's the difference between Namaklaba trying to get into the team at franchise level, and you have a guy like Dion Fourie who just won a World Cup, as an open side flanker or as a hooker as well. So there's a difference between that too. So if you're losing the one player that's just won a World Cup, I mean, that's playing the best rugby of his career, you're losing a guy like that, and now we're expecting Namaklaba to come in, and make that difference. But they definitely need a decent balance in that loose trio. Maybe with Haji leaving, I'm not sure if it's confirmed yet, might just be a blessing in disguise for them as a franchise, because they're not forced to play Evan and Haji. They can get that balance in that loose trio correct. And also, they got to look at the discipline as well. I mean, they got 2 cards yesterday against the Lions. They got a card, got a red, I think. So you got to look at your discipline as well, in certain games. And look at, I don't blame him. I'm not going to hit. I like him as a leader, and so it's his first year as Stormers captain, Salman Murat. He's going to grow into the role, but you got to look at that also, the leadership on the field as well. How did that play a role this year as well? Because I mean, he's also been one, that you can look at and say, did he have the best of seasons? I mean, yes, I'm sure you'll learn as a captain. He's an awesome captain. I won't be surprised one day he captains the box as well. But first year, other Stormers as the captain, there's a few questions to be asked him as well.
Fair enough. Hugh?
Yeah, I think, guys, look at the Springbok squad that's just been announced. I don't know if we're talking about it later. The Stormers have had 9 call-ups. 7 of them are forwards. 3 out of the 4 uncapped forwards in the squad are Stormers. So the Stormers' strength, yes, they've got these incredible razzle-dazzle backs. Like Sasha again was excellent. I can't believe they took him off. He must be injured. Why else would you take him off? Their strength is with the forwards, but they've refused all season to go with a forward plan game and to play tight. We've seen them take teams to the cleaners up front at times, but they just refuse to go with that. I've had this rant before. The Stormers have won the most scrum penalties out of any team in the URC, but they've also don't have the best scrum completion, suggesting that they're always risking it, trying to get the penalties. And they're just taking unnecessary risks all the time. And that just sums up their game plan. They're always trying to go hero or zero. Everything is hero or zero. But Warwick Halland had one of his Warwick Halland games. Lebok is actually, in terms of goal kicking percentage, one of the better goal kickers in South Africa. He's actually got a better kicking percentage than Sia Masuku, which people might not realise. And it sounds counterintuitive, but he really seems to struggle with breeze and winds. Whenever I see someone lying down with their hand on the ball for money, I always think, oh God, this isn't good. And he just seems to have games where he nails every kick, and he seems to have games where he can't hit a barn door, which is frustrating. And I don't know why Sasha didn't take over doing the kicking, because Sasha, in terms of his XG, exceeded with kicks. Opta gave me this stat yesterday of compared to goals that you would expect a kicker to get, Sasha outperforms his expected kicks per game more than anybody in the URC. So, yeah, it's just frustrating from the Stormers. This is why I say I think the coaches need to answer, because I think they underperform compared to the squad that they have. And I think they need to go back and go to a more structured, more forward-orientated game, and then let the backs execute off-strike plays, which we know they have the talent to do. Just so frustrating watching them all season.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And great stats analysis there as well with regards to the kicking element there, Hugh. Thanks. Vickers?
Sorry, guys, just before I forget, with the Namataba question, it's exactly what I was thinking about when Jade was speaking. The problem is, Jade, is that the moment Dion Fourie got injured, Namataba was never given a chance. He was never given a chance to grow in the role and get used to the level. So obviously you cannot come and play him in the playoffs, if I can say that. So yeah, it boils down back to the coaching staff on what they did when Dion Fourie got injured, because we on the outside know a lot of the Stormers, a lot of the Stormers' success was based on Dion Fourie making turnovers, either counter-attacking from unorganized defense because of the turnover, or penalty, kick for touch, maul, and basically get rewards for it. So this is why it always comes down to, in terms of coaching, in terms of what you can get, what you look at, the small things that you look at. Then my second point would be on what Hugh said. This is one of the reasons why I actually don't enjoy watching 15, because I'll tell you why. Because the problem is we get so stuck in giving people a certain role, and we don't change it, because we don't change the narrative, because we're trying to not to rock the boat, if I can call it like that. I ask myself so many times, Lions rugby have JC Pretoria starting on the field. This kid used to catch kickoffs freely, willy-nilly at the 7th. But guess what? We're going to go deep, and we're going to go try and get them to exit so that we can have a lineup, instead of taking a short kick, letting this kid catch, you're already on the front foot. So these are the kind of things that really irritate me over 15. So where I'm going with this is the Maneli Bok issue. There are certain players, when you test your players, and if you know your players in terms of kicking, there are certain players that kick well from 15 to the touchline on the right-hand side and 15 to the touchline on the left-hand side. They all differ in terms of like what Hugh was saying about the difficult kicks Sasha got more than Lubok. As a coaching group, as a kicking coach, I should go to any game knowing that my best kicker on the right-hand side is Sasha. My best kicker on the left-hand side, it's Mani. And that's their roles. But this is exactly, again, coaches in 15s don't want to change the narrative. They don't want to think out of the box. So I'd rather give a player that I know he's got a 50% chance of getting the kicks on the right. I'd rather give it to him than give it to the 80% chance of getting it from the right. So those are my two comments. And then on the last one, sorry, Jade, I can see your hand is up. On the last one was, guys, a lot of the Stormers' success came from the unorthodox kind of play, the structure, the kicking and the offloading. I mean, those chip kicks from Gelant, those are small things that used to happen. The step from Damon Willemse, half gap, offload, and then it's just offloads till we score. That is what we call high risk rugby with high rewards. But there comes a time when the high risk rugby doesn't give you the rewards, and then everyone starts questioning what is going on with your team. Whereas that's your DNA. That's what you do. That's how you were playing. So when you were winning, no one was complaining. And I kept on saying this last year and the previous year is that why is everyone congratulating the Stormers for playing this kind of rugby, whereas if the team start catching up on what they're doing, they're going to find themselves in trouble. And guess where we are now? It's 2 years later, of course, but everyone now is starting to be in that sense where where's the structure? Whereas I agree with you 100%. They should have gone with the structure in the first place. Rather play the boring rugby, but you have the most dominant forwards, man. You know? So I think, yeah, those are the kind of things that I've been thinking when Jade was talking about.
Sure, Jade.
Yeah, no. I just want to bring this up, especially to Vuyo. I mean, I would have no experience in terms of this, but it's just something that Tinus Delport mentioned in terms of Manili book, kicking with the wrong tee in windy weather. I'm surely, at this day and age, I mean, the kicking coach should have advised him or something like this. Vuyo, has ever come across this issue? I know you also used to kick to poles a few times, but back in your day when you played, you used sand. But what do you make of this? Do players just feel familiar with one tee? Do they use 2 or 3 tees in terms of different conditions? Or did you ever pick up on something like this? Because, I mean, the comment that he made really got me thinking in terms of different tees and different conditions.
Jay, that's quite something that I've never really thought of. But I'll tell you this: when I was with the Kings in Port Elizabeth, all our kickers, for some reason, out of the either, they had the lowest tees. Like, you remember the old Gilbert tee with the 4 pointers? They had that in Port Elizabeth, and they were using that to kick. So then Australians were using the kind of tees where it comes from, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not sure if it's rugby league or it's a different sport, but those tees are quite high. And I would understand why he mentioned it. But at the same time, with players, it again goes down to the adjusting. None of the players want to adjust because the coaches don't adjust. So it's almost like the creativity is being killed from the top down. And these are the kind of things that we should be talking about and trying to fix.
Oh, I mean, we could go on and on all day just talking about the Stormers alone, but we have to touch on the other teams as well. The Blue Bulls. With the Stormers element, there was also set piece problems, scrums, line outs. My goodness. I mean, we can't only look at maybe one particular aspect as kicking for goal. I think the Stormers also lost like their first 2 or 3 lineouts, or they were not getting good clean ball from the line out perspective on Saturday. And one of my mates mentioned that Joseph Dweba is throwing to the lock stomachs or the hip area. I found that quite funny. But nonetheless,
I've seen that quite a lot lately, throwing to the stomachs. I've seen it in a few games. I don't know whether it's a part of me thinks that it's a tactic because I see it so often. It can't surely be Hoka's throwing badly all the time.
It's hilarious, man. But nonetheless, focusing on the Blue Bulls on Saturday, I started watching that game from the beginning. I think the first 15 to 20 minutes. First 5 minutes, yes, it was a bit of a tug of war, and then the Blue Bulls started scoring tries. Curtly Aronson, obviously standout player in that first opening quarter. And I thought the Blue Bulls actually had momentum going into that first quarter, end of the first quarter, leading into the second half a little bit, leading into the back end of the first half, sorry. But I don't know what happened between the last 10 minutes of the first half, the first 10 to 15 minutes of the second half, something changed. Obviously, there were injuries and things like that. But at the end of the day, I mean, the Blue Bulls were supposed to run away with that game. They had a significant lead, and once things changed and Benetton actually started playing more rugby, keeping ball in hand in that second half, I thought that was quite key from their tactics. And obviously, what the number 10, I forgot his name, from Benetton, he actually kind of targeted all the props who were defending for the Blue Wolves. And if you look at one of his tries or two of his line breaks, there were a few heavy bodies around him, and he's got very good feet, and he also drifts away from the defensive line. And I think the Blue Bulls need to work on that if they are to beat Leinster next week. Their defensive pattern needs to really, really adjust. And we've seen that they've been leaking a lot of tries since Joey left and went to the Sharks. But at this point, Jade, what were your thoughts regarding the Blue Bulls, and what can they take from this past week's game, into the semi-finals against Leinster next week? Because Leinster are not going to hold back. They're going to keep running, attacking certain channels, especially around the fly-off area or fly-off and first center channels as well.
Look, I mean, they lost Curtly Aronson and Caden Moody for next week's game, so I think that's a big loss for the Bulls. I mean, that's two of the three X-factor players in that backline, basically. So, first of all, they're going to need to adjust and get the right balance in, whether it's de Klerk or, what's the guy's name, Devin Williams. I'm not sure who, or Sergio Peterson, whoever that comes in there, they're going to have to adjust, because, I mean, the Leinster have got good outside backs, and also they've got a lot of X-factor in that backline. And the other thing of the Bulls is we've been talking about this whole season. The Bulls have not put in an 80-minute shift this whole season. I mean, they play 40 minutes, take the foot off the gas, teams catch up to them, or in the last 20 or so, we've seen it. I mean, with, what's this team's name, with Glasgow, with Bordeaux, they've came back, they almost won the game. So for the Bulls, they're going to need an 80-minute performance next week at home and not take their foot off the gas. They're going to need to be focused for 80 minutes against Leinster if they want to beat Leinster. I think Leinster's coming to South Africa with a purpose. I think they listen to the clip of Ndabazinto, and, that's psyching them up. I mean, that's the Al Pacino clip in the dressing room. But at the end of the day, we're going to have to get an 80-minute performance from the Bulls next week, or else I don't see them beating Leinster, regardless of the altitude. They're going to need Loftus to be filled up and packed and to be hostile like we know Loftus to be. They're going to need the crowd as well. But in terms of what you said, defensively, they're going to have to sharpen up. I mean, I've also seen that yesterday with how the Flower of Benetton exposed them a few times. They're also going to have to be dominant at set-piece time. I mean, they've been good at set-piece, but, I mean, they're coming against a dominant pack. At lineouts, they've got to be solid. They can't give Leinster any turnover ball, any cheap penalties. When they put the pressure on Leinster next week, when they're in their red zone, do not give away soft penalties, and allow Leinster to exit easily, make them get poor exits, build up from there, go to your mauls, keep it close and tight, look for small yards, and take it from there, because that's what the Bulls can do. At the end of the day, it's a big test for them. I mean, they've beaten Leinster before in a semi-final. They know they can do it. I mean, they've got that psychological aspect against them, for them actually. But in terms of next week's scoop, I mean, we've said it a few times with the Bulls. I like the Bulls and I've backed them this season, but they're going to have to perform for 80 minutes, not 40 or 30 minutes burst and take your foot over the pedal, allowing Leinster to come back into the game. Because Leinster, for me, they can do that, have a 20-minute spell in the game next week and take the game completely away from the Bulls and cause the Bulls to chase the game. And we do know with Leinster, we do know with Ireland, they come out of the blocks firing. So their first 20 minutes is going to be key. So yeah, for me, the Bulls, 80 minutes next week, no errors, be good on defense, take every opportunity on attack, and then they'll stand a chance of winning the game.
Hugh, your favorite team in South Africa, the Blue Bulls. I mean, for me personally, I think this is probably their biggest test for the season. I really don't care about the final or anything like that, but I think this will make or break the Blue Bulls for this season. Yes, they've been kicked out of the Investec Championship, and they've lost to Stormers earlier on in the season, and we thought they could not go over the line against the Stormers, and eventually they did go over the line. But now they've made it through to the semifinals and hosting a semifinal at home. What are your thoughts, man, regarding this Blue Bulls team? Yes, we've spoken about them numerous times. We've had a rant from Dabez Zinto before as well about this team. But your thoughts, you've watched the Blue Bulls this season. At the beginning of this particular podcast last year, when the URC was kicking off, we all said, okay, we think the Blue Bulls might go all the way. And now they've come to a semi-final, but they've been inconsistent throughout the season. So like Jade said, 40-minute performance, but the other 40 is a bit lethargic. Your thoughts with regards to the Blue Bulls this coming weekend?
Yeah, our friend must be worried a bit after he slagged off Leinster so much the other week, and now they could come and beat the Blue Bulls at Loftus. Thoughts and prayers with you, mate. Yeah, look, I think I agree with what everybody else has said. You need to be putting together the 80-minute performance. They did manage to show that they could tighten up against Benetton when they needed to, as much as probably wasn't a great performance. It's actually like the fewest tries they've conceded in quite a long time. The Bulls, for me, need to take Leinster out of their comfort zone. Leinster are like a droid army. They just keep coming at you, and it's like a mincing machine, but they don't like to solve problems on the pitch. They don't like to be taken out of their comfort zone. So if you can do what the Bulls have done lately, which is score early, rack up a few tries in the first 20 minutes, you're putting Leinster in a position that they don't often find themselves in, and they don't necessarily know how to dig themselves out of. I mean, we don't know. No one ever really does that to Leinster. So you just got to go for it from minute one and be as different as a challenge that Leinster have faced all season. We often don't really see the Leinster first lines travel outside Ireland. I think they've travelled to La Rochelle in the Champions Cup group stages, and apart from that, they haven't played many games outside Ireland, these guys. So again, you just got to make it an experience for them that they're just not used to facing. It's tough without Moody, and if they don't have Aronson as well, they're a big blow. Both of those guys are on 10 tries each, which is phenomenal for the season. To have two wingers both on 10 tries just in the league alone in 18 games, 19 games, you don't see that very often. And to think as well, they're behind David Creel, who is by miles top for tries and try assists combined in the URC. You wonder whether he'd have gotten into the box squad if the Blue Bulls were available to be selected. Yeah, you just got to go full blue balls in this game. If you try and be clever, Leinster will out clever you. You just got to be weird, unique, spectacular. That's the way that they're going to win this game.
Yeah, fair enough. Vickers, before we jump into the best league in the world.
You mean the Vodacom Cup? All right, listen. So no, I'm pretty easy with what the guys have said. I'm pretty sure. I think it's spot on in terms of that 80-minute performance. There's just, I think with the Bulls losing obviously the two wingers, I don't see much of a problem. I mean, I know what Peterson can do. I know what Stravino Jacobs is also there in the wing. I mean, they can also use Cornel Hendricks in the centers and shift maybe Creel to one of the wingers. I'm pretty sure they'll play around with it. There's also obviously with the fullback David Williams. He can also cover fullback, and maybe if there is that, if they need to, is obviously have Villy and one of the wingers. But I'm pretty sure they'll find a way of how they can put it together. One of the things for me was when what Benetton decided to change within the game was kicking to the Bulls and kicking and giving them lineouts. They tried to keep the ball infield. Then, and you know, with attacking, it's once you start attacking and you keep on being relentless in your attack, there's bound to someone who's gonna make a mistake, or the team that's defending is gonna be fatigued. So I think that was a great tactic by Benetton. And they literally, their shape broke down completely. Their shape broke down completely on attack, and they literally went back to the touchline and restarted it. And the Bulls just kept on making good defensive efforts until there was a couple of mistakes. I still, the 14 for Benetton, the 11 for Benetton was absolutely outstanding yesterday. I think he definitely deserved to be man of the match if it wasn't obviously between him and the 10, definitely. And I think Kabisi at 9 also didn't have a bad game, although he knocked in an open try line. So I think it's just when you're gonna play, if Leinster come, and if you guys remember back in the days, I'm not sure Hugh would know you. I don't know if I was following rugby when the Crusaders beat the Bulls at Loftus by a huge score, and all the lineouts were quick. Everything was quick. I think this is the kind of game to catch the Bulls out of play. It's to bring that fast rugby. They know that they can handle their scrums, so the scrums won't be a problem. The mauls they can probably handle, but it's the fact that you're going to slow the game down again. So if they come out firing and they keep the ball and they force them to make defensive efforts, they force them to make tackles, I think the Bulls will start to fold. And that's where Leinster will be even more brutal than Benetton is, making them pay for those mistakes. So yeah, but yeah, like the guys said, Bulls just need to be tightened up and make sure that they give an 80-minute performance.
All right, lastly, Vickers, you've seen the Sharks have had a massive exodus of players. Plumtree kicking out a number of guys from that team. A guy like Skhumbuzo Noche, Mpumelelo is asking here, I mean, Skhumbuzo Noche, do you think he can make it back into that Stormers setup?
I mean, come on, guys. Evan Ross is younger. We got Daimane. Okay, if Daimane leaves, then maybe he'll be the third best. But you got Junior Pokomela there. To be honest, if I was Noche, I wouldn't go that route, unless it's purely based on the love for the club and obviously Chum's money. But I wouldn't go there, because when Junior Pokomela left the Cheetahs, he was exactly in the same boat as Skhumbuzo Noche, and we haven't seen Junior. We haven't seen him. So which means the loose forwards that they have, they're content with them. So him coming in would be another setback from him. I think he should be looking at getting overseas, or the Lions have just lost Chutuka. He probably won't play eighth man because they've got a very good eighth man, the Lions, but he can definitely maybe push for the number 7 jersey.
Okay, fair enough. Jade, down under, quarterfinals footy. Obviously, from my perspective, I do not think there was a game that really stood out besides, the Brumbies and the Highlanders for the first 60 minutes of the game. But the other games were pretty much stock standard. What are your thoughts? Just an overall view, and then we can just look into obviously what's happening next week and how next week will probably fare out within the Super Rugby Pacific element.
Yeah, I think our argument of having the playoffs being 6 teams, instead of 8, this just got stronger, maybe pushing through the top 2 to the semi-finals and having 3, 4, 5, and 6 playing against each other for that other spot. Big difference, I think the Highlanders, they gave the Brumbies a scare a little bit, but then they folded. The other games wasn't even close. It was a little bit to the Rebels against the Canes, but then once the Canes found their groove, once the Chiefs and the Blues got their groove, there was no competition on the day, for those teams. And again, like with the URC, all of the home teams won. So I think it's also maybe an eye-opener in terms of getting them to, change it up a little bit. Maybe the top 2 go through and then you have a playoff format to get into the semis for the other 4 of the top 6. But yeah, I'm looking forward to next week. I'm looking forward to see what the Brumbies do against the Blues. The Brumbies came to Auckland a few weeks ago and got hammered. The Blues is playing now without. It's unfortunate that the captain, Perry Toops, did his knee, so he's out for the season. So, they could need another leader. Okay, Dalton Papali is there, but Perry Toops was playing arguably the best rugby of his career so far, and then he did his knee, so it's unfortunate. Other than that, the Blues, we saw the weekend, a guy like Rico, getting into his stride again, Scoop, so he's looking good. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the Brumbies travel, what they do, because I heard Stephen Larkham speak yesterday, and he said that the Brumbies normally get Sunday and Monday off, but they're going to have to travel on Tuesday to New Zealand, so they won't basically train until Wednesday. They'll just have a light training session on Monday, basically, and then on Wednesday, once they get into New Zealand after flying on Tuesday, they'll have their first session. So it'll be difficult for them playing on Friday as well. So, their backs are against the wall to see what the Brumbies do. And then the other one is the one I'm looking forward to, with the Bulls and Leinster. I'm looking forward to this Chiefs Hurricanes game. I think that's going to be a cracker. I think it's going to be a close game. I don't think the Hurricanes will run away with this. I think it'll be a close game. I can see the Chiefs winning this game because let's see how the Chiefs can get the Hurricanes to tighten up. We know with the Chiefs, if they play with Finau and Wallace Tutu, they're different. Wallace Titi, they're a different beast up front. So let's see what they do next week against the Canes. I think that for me is the one I'm really looking forward to in terms of Super Rugby next week's group. I'm sure you as well. That's the game that stands out. And yeah, so we'll see. I hope the Chiefs win so that the final can be at Eden Park. For my team, the Blues, but yeah, even doesn't matter who's as long as the Blues is in the final. But I really was looking forward to that Chiefs Hurricanes game next week.
Yeah. I think the Chiefs have really stood up from last week or the past 2 weeks, having all their players back as well. And I think the structure has changed to what we've seen in the round robin games. They've also kind of tightened up a bit. And I think the Hurricanes and the Blue Bulls, Auckland Blues probably have the more direct and confrontational forward packs in the competition. I used to think the Brumbies had a good forward pack, but Vern Cotter has really, really changed what Auckland Blues rugby DNA is this season, to be honest. And the Hurricanes as well, they've got very prominent loose forwards, very good front row as well. Even losing an All Black, they still stood up and really performed well. The Chiefs are really finding their groove and finding their strides. But yeah, it will be a humdinger in Wellington on Saturday morning. Yes. Now, Jade Vuyo, you wanted to ask something. I think I saw your hand coming up.
No, bro. I realized maybe it's not a good question because I was about to ask why isn't that domestic competitions don't use the finals as on a neutral ground just to cut out the fan base type of thing. You know what I mean? So just using neutral grounds, obviously within the country, because I think it would be actually nice to see a Stormers Bulls game at Ellis Park. It would be good to see, for example, a final between the Blues and the Crusaders at Westpac Stadium, something like that. I was just thinking about it, but decided to pull it out.
Yeah, I think it's more of a financial aspect more than anything, because the teams that host the games, obviously the gate money, etc., that clubs are spending a lot of money within their organization, so they hope that they get that money back within the fans aspect. So if we had a Hurricanes Chiefs game being played at Eden Park, I mean, you won't probably find a lot of fans pitching up for that particular game, and also distance and things like that. But yeah, this is just from the top of my head at this point in time. Hugh, any Super Rugby not expertise, I mean, thoughts this weekend? I hardly think you, unless you probably
Well, I won't take that
Yes,
personally, Scoop. Any Oh, no, I won't ask you for expertise. Jeez. Not really. I just feel like the season in Super Rugby is so short. It just, when I see like the quarterfinals, I'm like, well, I swear I just watched these games 2 weeks ago. It just feels quite repetitive at this point. And, it's not that many fewer games than the URC or the Premiership, for example, but the URC and the Premiership are spread out over a lot more months. So it feels a bit fresher to me. So, yeah. One team that I will call out, you talk about rugby teams playing rugby look easy. I've never seen a rugby team make rugby look more difficult than the Fijian Drua. Whenever they got the ball, it looks like they're trying to push a boulder up a mountain, a sheer face or something. It's like, guys, why is this so hard? Why you just run at people? Like, don't they keep? It's so frustrating. They're probably, even more than the Stormers, the most frustrating team to watch for me is the Fijian Drua. I just want to just run at people. You're massive. Just keep it simple.
You are massive, run at people. Confrontation is the name of the game, and I think Rassie Erasmus is probably one of the only coaches in world rugby who really believes and understands what DNA means for his country. Basically, now we're heading into the series, guys. DNA Rugby. We've been doing a series for the past couple of weeks, looking at every nation in world rugby, and we are continuing with that. This week we are looking at the Springboks and the All Blacks. Moment of silence. Vickers, I'm going to shoot straight at you for this one. We're going to start off with the Springboks first. When you think Springbok rugby, what's the first thing that comes to mind? What is their DNA? What is their foundation? What is their philosophy? On the field, from an eye test perspective, what do you see? Or what have you seen? Let's say from the first time you watched the Springboks to today. I mean, what has transpired over the years? Is it still the same as it was in the 1990s, for example? Take us through your thoughts regarding this DNA from the Springboks.
Look, it's pretty simple. I don't think anyone will probably get it wrong when it comes to Springboks. Literally, the old Blue Bulls rugby. That's the way I see it. The dominating the advantage line. Actually, this game plan probably was started by Ian McIntosh with the Springboks of 1992 or 3, if I'm not mistaken. He was dominating the advantage line. and using your forwards to come around and dominate the advantage line so that you get over you push back the defense. That's basically it with the Springboks game plan. And in recent years, the Springbok DNA, if you don't have the 12, then it's not a Springbok team. So we can never have a situation with the Springboks where you see two fly halves at once. For example, a Manili Bok and a Pollard at 12. That's not going to happen in Springboks rugby. Springboks rugby is all about using that 12 as a dominant carrier. So he's almost like a ninth forward. So I would see that as a part of the DNA for the Springboks, having that ninth forward at 12, obviously to help with the power game. And then in recent years, Rassie has tweaked it a little bit with the kick chase. We're pretty known for our kick chase because we call it busting the breakdown on the catch. So using obviously guys like Evan Itzebeth, Sia Kolisi, your eighth man is usually either your Visa or your Dwayne, getting into that breakdown and busting it out. So I would say the DNA for the Springboks boils down to the eight guys playing forwards, and the one guy at center, and then obviously giving the outside guys the freedom to be able to play if they do get momentum. But if they don't get momentum, obviously we know it's the kick and chase and back in the defense.
Fair enough, Vickers. So basically, good, strong forward pack, having a very dominant 12 in terms of ball carries. And then now Rassie has kind of tweaked it a bit, introducing things like the kicking element and testing the players in the air. I think, what's his name? In 2009, what's the coach? What is the coach name? Peter De Villiers. Is it De Villiers? Yeah.
Peter De Villiers.
Yeah, in 2009, that period, 2008, 9, 10. I think they also introduced the kicking element. And then Jake White introduced the rush defense, which now Jacques Nienaber has also tweaked into his own format that they're currently using. So, yeah, there has been a bit of tweaking, but they've kept the same, from what I gather from you, they've kept the same standard or the same shape into this era. Hugh, when you think Springbok,
sorry,
sure.
Scoop. I mean, sorry, Hugh. It's just looking at, for example, I'm just thinking at the top of my head, Yappie Mulder, 12, 1995, I think, was Yappie Mulder. After Yappie Mulder, who was next was, did Trevor Hellstad ever play for the Boks? Like there's so many similar 12s up until Damon Dialende. And if you look at the reason Andre Esterhuizen made the Springbok is because he's exactly the same shape in the same mode.
Yeah, fair enough. Hugh?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that I can add to what Vio said there about the Boks. You should know what you're getting with the Boks, and it should be about stopping it. Yes, they do try and add layers of intricacy every now and again, but when push comes to shove, they start pushing and shoving. I'm reminded of a Harry Jones quote where he said, guys, what we're going to do is we're going to smash it harder than them. We're going to kick it farther than them. And when they say use it, by God, use it. I think my question more is what is the next cycle of the Boks going to look like? Because I'm seeing these players come through, these Manila Boks, these Sasha Ngomazulus. You've already got your Damien Willemses, and then the wingers of Colby and Aronser and other players like that. So Nelly Nohamba, I know he didn't get picked, but players like that. We're seeing a real generation of X Factor razzle dazzle players coming through in South Africa. So I'm wondering, is it going to be really difficult for Rassie over the next 4 years to maintain this high system driven game plan and not start picking these X Factor players, which might cause for the structure of the Boks to start breaking down slightly? I'm interested to get your guys' thoughts on that.
Yeah, Jade, you can jump in there and answer Hugh. And answer, because I mean, I think for me to be quite honest with regards to this. I thought about this actually during the week when I was watching one of the All Blacks in their own words documentary, and they were talking about change and the different type of caliber of players that were coming through the system, and how the whole old school, inverted commas, old school type of coaching was not necessary, or the young players coming through did not respond well to that. So you raised quite a pertinent question there, Hugh, in terms of how Rassie and his coaching staff will respond to the younger generation that's coming through now. But I think only time will tell, because I don't want to say things here and then think, maybe I was quite wrong. But at the back of my mind, I think I do have a bit of an idea of how things will probably change, but I don't want to share those ideas yet. But it'll probably take maybe another year or two before we see the transition between the youth and the different generation that's coming through, and the coaching philosophy from a Rassie Erasmus perspective. Vuyo, you wanted to jump in there?
Yeah, so no, I just wanted to also jump on the question. I think the most important that you have to look at, Hugh, is the appointment of the attack coach. So, not in a million years would Rassie appoint a Kiwi, a guy who's playing a very expensive rugby within his ranks. So he did that appointment because he's anticipating exactly what you are thinking of. And also, within that, if you remember, Swayze de Bruin was appointed 2018, and Swayze is a very outside the box thinker, similar to sort of like a person like Tony Brown, which is why the Lions played such an expansive game. If you guys remember 2016, 17, was it 16 or was it 17? I think it was 2016, 2017, 2018. I think before he quit in 2019, the Lions were playing very expensive rugby. And I think I don't want to say it is what it is, but I'm saying at that time, maybe Rassie appointed Swayze prematurely, not understanding what kind of group he had. So, which is maybe why Swayze got out of the system. And then now that he's had that opportunity to actually really look at what the next crop of group of players is, maybe that's why now the Tony Brown appointment. Because we can only say, why would you bring Tony Brown to come in and say and teach players how to kick and chase?
Very, very well said there, Vickers. Yeah, that could be. I mean, I think he's pretty much answered the question there. But yeah, as I said, time will definitely be the true teller of how things will be going into the next cycle of rugby, of World Cup rather. Jade, your turn. Die Bokke van Bloem.
No, look, everybody, hit the nail on the head in terms of, the Ian McIntosh era, dominating forward backs. I mean, we've seen guys coming up through Kitch Christie. I mean, your big enforcers, the Kobus Vissers, your Hannes Strydhoms, those kind of Mark Andrews, and then later on. But if you break it down and you look at the successful eras of Springbok rugby, you're looking at maybe 95 with, I just mentioned the kind of team they had Jean-Pierre Mulder at 13 and then Leroux at 12, and you had Peter Mulder also was in the setup, and you had big players, you had big physical players, playing physical rugby, Bali Swart, all of those guys. And then you went on to a transition to a period where you had Nick Mallet, where they also went on a 16 game run, and but they're a little bit more expansive under Mallet, they played a little bit more expansive rugby with Henry Hannibal at 10, who was a more expansive fly-off. And then moving on, once the Blue Bulls became dominant, I mean, Jake really used that platform in 2007 with the Blue Bulls and the Sharks both being dominant and picked a real, physical team, big back, and they won the World Cup. And then the same with Rassie now, with this team now, dominating up front, hard runners, physical, dominating at scrum time. But I don't want to go too much into it, but if you're looking at this is the DNA of the Springboks, this is their DNA. It doesn't mean it's South African rugby's DNA, because we play so much different brands of rugby in South Africa, and depending on where you go, I mean, if you're looking at the flair and, you know, the guys like Jason Colby and Daimani and, you know, all of those guys they bring in, you know, they play expansive game, they play with flair. You look at the guys that we have on the 7 circuit, you know, they come through, they have flair and stuff like that. So it doesn't mean that, you know, that is South Africa's brand of rugby. That's just what has been successful for the Springboks, has been this physical, you know, hard, sometimes 10-man rugby. In terms of what they're going to do forward, they have to take, you know, accountable and have to look at what they do have in their stocks. I mean, you have guys like Evan Roos coming through, you have exciting players coming through like Sasha and those guys, hence why I think they adopted the Tony Brown playbook on attack, and I think that's why we'll see the mixture come through now. But in terms of the Springboks, what's been successful for them is, like as I've mentioned, you know, the physicality, you know, the kicking game, the kick chase game. I mean, but they can razzle dazzle. I mean, we've seen it in Wellington a few years ago where they went toe to toe with New Zealand, and, you know, they scored, both teams scored like 7 tries, something like that. So they can razzle dazzle as well. But yeah, in terms of what's been successful for them has been what you have mentioned, their physicality, sometimes 10-man rugby, kicking, scrumming, lineouts, and they keep on evolving in terms of the physicality at the breakdown. So yeah, that's Springbok rugby, but also, you know, we play a lot of different brands of rugby in South Africa, actually.
You raised quite an interesting point there, Jade, with regards to the different brands. I think at provincial level, if you look at the Western Province style of play, has always been about running from deep. They've always had these wingers that could run from anywhere, even in the early 90s. I mean, the Duplessis, the Peter Rousseaus of this world, the Brayton Pulsars of this world, the Chester Williams of this world, you know, they've always played with flair down in Cape Town. And if you try to identify a Sharks type of rugby, can't really make out what their rugby was. Lions, forward pack, Blue Bulls, forward pack dominance. But yeah, I mean, Cheetahs always running with flair as well. Under the Helgard Miller eras, who's this coach now at Glasgow? That era as well. Franco Smith. I mean, those oaks were running in Bloemfontein. Bloemfontein actually and Grey College kind of played Free State Cheetahs rather, and Grey College played similar type of rugby. I think rugby was quite different, but focusing on that particular aspect of the Springboks, yes, there is a bit of flair, but come World Cup time, does flair still help the Springboks win a World Cup, for example? Or they have to press the reset button and move back to what they know and move back to what wins them championships, right? As a coach, because would you keep the flair element or would you stay to the same structures? Because that's winning you championships, no?
Look, I would definitely look at changing a few things in terms of you can go in the World Cup with the mindset of the flair and using obviously the Tony Brown playbook, definitely. But the moment you hit the quarterfinals, the semifinals, we've seen it with England. The simplest is the best. The simplest is the best. You can literally grind the teams out, make them tired, get the penalties, get the 3 points. Because in knockout rugby, everything changes. So I would think that that's probably stock standard, that the guys would definitely look at how they can tweak it. But also remember, guys, they're not going to change the whole game plan. They're not going to change the whole DNA of the Springboks. They're just going to tweak a few things because they will probably look at the counter-attacking aspect. They've got Cheslin, they've got Kurtley Arendse, they've got Moody. They literally will look at how they can use those guys back in the game. I don't think they will change the forward pack dominance. I don't think they will change the 12 dominance. I think they're just going to tweak a few things and see how they can use the quality of players they have to obviously to influence games a little bit more after the kicks. Sorry. Just to touch on what you guys were talking about, Rassie Rasmus actually was part of the group of the Cheetahs coaching playing that expensive rugby.
Yeah, during the Kaunda era, etc., they were actually playing very good, expensive rugby. I think it was between 2004 to 2007, 8, roughly. But nonetheless, Jade, the most important one, your best side, your best team, the All Blacks. We've seen pretty much different styles of play from New Zealand over the years, but I think they've stuck with a similar DNA from what I've seen over the years as well. Philosophy is still the same. I don't think much has changed from a New Zealand perspective. But from your view, I mean, going back into the 90s until to date, what do you think when it comes to All Blacks rugby?
No, look, when you look at All Black rugby, you always look at, a team trying to evolve the game. I mean, we've seen it in the early 90s when the likes of Michael Jones, John Coe and them came on the scene, evolved the game, was more, kind of running rugby, where New Zealand before that, okay, there were flair and there was expansive game, but I mean, there was also a lot of big, guys up front, And then, the John Aloma era and, the Zanzambroek era, John Aloma era, going through a little bit of a stalemate where they were caught between identities when you had 1999, basically 2003, 4 thereabout, where you had Wayne Smith, John Mitchell, all of them getting the job. And then, they were they were good, but I mean, they weren't the best in the world. And then under Graham Henry, again, they went back to the basics, into what the New Zealand DNA is. And, they set it up from there. Went on with Steve Hansen, and I mean, when they were successful, 2011, 2017, thereabout, where, sometimes were unplayable, where they were good in all aspects, solid up front in the scrum, might not have had the best scrum in the world, but solid. I mean, then you looked at, solid at line-out time, solid in the air, good on defense, might not be the best defense, might not be like the box rush defense, but they had a good defense system, good fly-offs, made decisions, good centers. I mean, attack space, always look for space. I mean, that's part of their DNA, space, and everybody will tell you when you play New Zealand, you've got to cut off their space, speed up the game, tackle them hard back. They don't like to be tackled hard. They don't like to be they used to be in their face. So for me, that's All Black rugby, but it's just the way they love the game, the way they appreciate the game, the way they're looking at trying to evolve the game. We've seen them coming through in 2011 about with Sonny Bill Williams and all those guys with the offload game picking up on there. Then we've seen with Bowden Barrett, the tactical kicking game, when he was running at his best in 2016, 2017. We've seen it there. I mean, right now, I think they call it crossroads, but what they do is, what part of New Zealand rugby is, taking your opportunities. I mean, you've seen with the Crusaders when they've been successful, they might not be the best team on the field, but taking the opportunities, smelling blood, having moments in the game where they can take the game away from you, razzle dazzle, they can go end to end. I mean, we've seen not everything is going to be like the Carlos Spencer era, but I mean, they can run from anywhere. They attack, they know how to run into space, they know how to run off the ball. They've got good scrummages, they've always had good props, good locks, But yeah, that's New Zealand rugby. I mean, just the way they appreciate the game, the way they try to evolve the game, It's not just running from point A to point B, because if you look at the successful New Zealand teams, they kicked a hell of a lot, but kick tactically, playing smart, kicking up in moments, being street smart. That's one thing of New Zealand as well, and that's one thing that the Boks picked up now recently, was being street smart, knowing the dark arts of the game. So yeah, that's New Zealand rugby for me. The other thing that also, which you could look at the DMA of the All Blacks, and a lot of the coaches do come from the Canterbury region, because you look at, like Wayne Smith came from there, Hanson's from there, even Reizen now is from there as well. So a lot of them come from that region, and obviously the Crusaders being successful as well, from that region. So yeah, that's New Zealand rugby. their DNA is, they love rugby, always trying to evolve the game, looking for space, trying to stand in front foot, taking their chances, playing the game at a high tempo, high intensity, appreciating the game, loving the game, always looking, to keep ball in play. So, yeah, that's New Zealand rugby.
Yeah, fair enough. Hugh, your thoughts? All Blacks.
Yeah, I started watching rugby in the era where the All Blacks were pretty much perfect. That 2011 to 2015 era. For me, the 2015 All Blacks is the greatest rugby team ever that we've seen in our sport. I think Jade covered it. I think the All Blacks have always been they're the quickest, but in every sense, they're the quickest thinkers. They're the quickest to act. They're always a step ahead of the opposition. Warren Gatton talks about heads up rugby all the time, and I think the All Blacks play heads up rugby better than anybody. They can see things on a rugby pitch quicker than anybody else, and they've got the skills to execute whatever needs to be done. So the All Blacks often score quite weird tries where something weird happens in the build up, but it's because they recognize a scenario in front of them and they know how to execute from that scenario. So you can play the All Blacks sometimes and you get to the end of the game and you think, it was quite a close game. We gave them quite a good challenge there. And you look at the scoreboard and you've lost by 25, 30 points. And it is crazy. They could just score out of nothing, as I'm sure any Australian fan listening to this will know. So it's interesting to watch the Blues at the moment play in Super Rugby and play in a way that you would think is perhaps not a typical Kiwi way, or at least not a typical Super Rugby way, you would say. And watching that Blues Hurricanes game from a couple of weeks ago is very different to what we're normally used to seeing from the Kiwi teams. And so I'm interested to see how they evolve, especially into this new era under Razor, where they're going to have a big refresh of the players as well. But DNA, they have an aura about them, like it or not. And I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't like acknowledging the aura the All Blacks have. But, other than probably the Springboks and England, weirdly, every other team who plays against the All Blacks steps onto the pitch probably already beaten. Ireland have got a good record against the All Blacks now, so they've probably gotten over that. But I can certainly say from a Welsh point of view, we're beaten as soon as we step onto the pitch against the All Blacks because we don't truly believe we can beat them. So, yeah. And, of course, they get to do the haka as well, which helps. That helps feed into the aura side of it, of there's something magical about that All Blacks jersey. So, yeah, just their DNA is just being really, really, really good at rugby. And if rugby's a race, every bit of rugby is a race, and it's the first to get to the ball and to do the thing in the shortest amount of time. The All Blacks are always the best at winning the race.
Oof. Well, Vickers, do you hear that? DNA, the All Blacks. And don't tell me it's the haka.
No, Jade and Hugh, I mean, you guys you've made very good, valid points. I mean, the one thing I would add from there is pretty obviously the turnovers. I think All Blacks rugby has always been about. I think they call it excitement from turnovers. Like when they make a turnover, everyone's sort of excited, switch on, and let's move the ball. They score a lot of tries of turnovers. I think, which is why, if you look at their selection, I would actually love to see their selection booklet, like a positional specific booklet, because if I think about it, if you look at all their sixes, I mean the Josh Cornfelds, the Richie McCaws, I mean Sam Cane was actually quite brilliant at that in his younger era, which sort of changed. I think that if I look at that number 7 jersey, and if you look at your number 8 jersey, your number 8 jersey needs to be that fancy boy, flamboyant, quite type. Your Zinzan Brooks, your Kieran Reid. I mean, with Sevilla joining the league, joining the party within that, not being able to settle the ball, offloads, those kind of things. Number 8s. Their 9s are always nippy. They always look for nippy 9s that can let you forget on defense. They pass. All of a sudden, they hit a line break. So guys like Aaron Smith, if you look at back in the days, your Byron Kelleher's were doing that quite well. Your Justin Marshall was not so much on it, but obviously because he just had a great partnership with the Tens. I think for the first time, New Zealand had a razzle-dazzle 10 was when Richie Mwanga was in. But before that, most of their 10s were pretty straightforward. This is what you get. This is what he's going to do. Then, obviously, the outside backs. If you look at their number 14, their number 14 was never a winger going into the national team, going into the All Blacks. It was always like a 15. Your Israel Dag started playing with 14. Your Ben Smith started playing at 14. It was Glenn Osborne. I think he also played 14. So you look at they have a certain selection protocol that they look at for certain positions, and if you and their 11s obviously have to be blitz, quick, everything. So for me, I think like the guys have said, they're spot on. But I just wanted to add in the fact that when they select, there's certain positions that they don't compromise on. And obviously, when you have a guy like Dan Coles on the hooker who has to run on the touchline, even better. Whereas they had Kevin Melamu there, he was obviously not that quick. Now they've got Taylor, who's obviously doing his hustle, but they always have this DNA selection process for which players they select, and if those players fit within the team and they bring in the extra attributes, like we talk about Dan Cole with the speed, then why not? I'm pretty sure if New Zealand had an option of picking Sheehan, they would definitely go for it immediately. But that's what I'm trying to say with the selection. That's like a quote selection booklet. You look at the certain attributes for certain positions that you don't compromise on.
All right. No, fair enough. Fair enough. D-Mac, you wanted to jump in on the DNA of the All Blacks before we round it off this week's episode.
Yeah, thanks, Scoop. I'm not sure what else I can add after what everyone said, but maybe I can just repackage it in a way. But there is no better counter-attacking team, I think, in the world in the All Blacks. And that comes back to the attributes all of you mentioned, the heads-up rugby, the ability to anticipate play and things like that. And they've also been known historically as innovators of the game through that wing-forward rule, starting with Dave Gallagher, the 1905 team, the interplay between backs and forwards, those things, set piece, tries, trick plays, and things like that. So they've always challenged the norm when it comes to the game. Also, like before Kronfeld, there wasn't anything like a feature. Teams used to counter-ruck each other, and then he sort of started putting his hands or getting first to the breakdown and stealing the ball and things like that. So he developed that feature role, and then Neil Beck of England and McCaw came, and then you had guys like I forgot his name, and Heinrich Brusseau, like all that. So all those things started evolving. So they've always sort of done that. But I've got to be honest, and I'm sorry for my French, but under this Fozzie era, there has been focal innovative that they've been doing. So it's been really a lot of people talk about the order that's gone and things like that. And to a degree, you have to say that their legacy is somewhat tainted under his tenure, and it's now a new era with Razor, and no one has any idea what that's going to look like. But also coming back to their forwards, what Ryan has done though is that I've never seen this before, but they're starting to produce a dominant pack, and the All Blacks never used to score like these small tries a lot, like they have since he's come and joined, and like their physicality has increased. And I think that's also because historically New Zealand in their coaching boxes never had a lot of forwards. Most of their coaches, assistants included, have all been backline players. So the focus on the forward play has never been that immense until probably now with Razor and Ryan that's coming in. And speaking to that, when Jade was talking about the props and those type of forwards, is that they have always had technically good forwards, but not that you're physically dominant. That was more always South Africa and to a degree England. in certain areas, and France as well. But that was never the All Blacks. Thanks.
All right. Thanks there, DMAC. Thank you, Jade. Thank you, Hugh. Thank you, Vuyo. And all our listeners who also contributed with your comments under this space. But yeah, Rugby DNA is a fascinating one. Obviously, looking forward to more conversations regarding this particular element as teams try and adapt to this decade and how things will change within this decade that we're in currently within the rugby aspect, because there's always a coach trying something new, trying something innovative, and everyone follows that particular trend within the rugby aspect. And I hope Vuyo doesn't get too annoyed once he sees that rugby coaches in 15s are not really innovative or trying something new and changes within their particular aspect. Yes, Jade.
So, since we covered the All Blacks today, does it mean that we covered Tonga, Samoa, and Fiji's DNA as well?
Yeah, of course. That's the academies.
That's the academy.
We have to do the academies. In the academies, I know. Scrumming Flower is a big fan of the New Zealand academies, Fiji, Tonga, and Samoa. So yeah, we have to look at them in the.
Very great college.
Oh yeah, and great college as well.
It's like Jade. It's like South Africa and Namibia. So South Africa's got the base, and Namibia is the academy.
all the guys that are playing there at Griquas and the Cheetahs coming from Namibia, and Burka and the Leopards as well. But anyway, we're not going to talk about those academies. Anyway, gentlemen, thank you very much. We've come to an end of our quite long podcast this week. But anyway, it was well worth it. Lovely conversations. Thank you everyone for listening in. See you guys next week, Sunday, same time, same place. Rugby Scoop.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Everyone.
Cheers.